Welcome to the Big Book Study Podcast for anyone and everyone interested in a spiritual way of life. We are a step study which meets each week on Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. You can find our website at primarypurposebigbookstudy.com. I'm Tina from Idaho. We also have Nicole from Texas, Heather from Saskatchewan, Dave from Idaho, and Kathleen from Colorado. All right. This is our Step 3 podcast. And we're starting on page 60 in the Big Book. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear three pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic or codependent or addict of some kind and could not manage our own lives. That B, probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism or addiction or codependency. C, that God could and would if he were sought. Being convinced, we're at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. Just what do we mean by that? And just what do we do? And I will open that up for comments. I'll go ahead and offer a comment. So those two words,
Dave.
being convinced. Go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to say, thank goodness that we have the sentence, just what do we mean by that and just what do we do? Because that means that this isn't just a description of turning our will and our life over to God and then praying and sort of keeping our fingers crossed and hoping that, God will step in and our life will get better. It means that it comes with an instruction manual. What do we mean by that? And just what do we do? Means that this whole idea that God could and would relieve our addiction is exactly what we did in order to participate in doing that. So this is an action program. This is not just a pray and hope program. There are very specific instructions on what to do. And with that, I'll pass. Thanks.
This is Tina, and my comments are the words being convinced after those ABCs are that we are now convinced after doing step 1 and step 2 that we are either alcoholic or addict or codependent and could not manage our own lives. That we saw that in that process that we went through. And that B, we also saw that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism or addiction, our codependency. And C, basically all we have to say at this point is what we came up with in step 2, that we now believe or are willing to believe that there might be a power that could restore us to sanity. That's all that we have to believe at this point. And then the two words being convinced just mean, do we have any other good ideas that we want to try? Any other human solutions that we'd like to pursue before we move on to step 3? And with that, I'll pass.
Thanks, Tina. This is Kathleen. I was looking at this part about that God could and would if he were sought. So now we're starting to realize, okay, so we can't do it. We don't have any power over it. We've tried everything. I'm willing to believe that something can, and we have to seek it. so the instructions in this book that we're going to continue to cover through this podcast, that is the seeking of it. It's like, well, we don't just believe, we have to seek it. It says here, if he were sought, he would take care of this. So, he would take care of what we need. And so there's this, we have to learn, what does it mean to seek that? Because what we have always done is seek to be in control, seek to find the answers, to figure out how to get what it is that we think we need to get to be happy, to be successful, whatever that means. And so that's the only way we know how to do it, is to seek our own figuring things out, our own ideas. And we don't know how to seek something other than that to take care of us, take care of our needs, know what's best for us, which might be different than what we think we want. And I'll pass with that.
Thank you, Kathleen. I'd like to make a comment about which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. So our will we can think of as our thinking, and our life we can think of as our actions. So that's another way we can state this, is that we're going to turn our thinking and our actions over to God or higher power as we understood God or higher power. And then, we get to the point where we want to do that. We don't know how to do that, but we want to do that. And then it tells us just exactly what they mean and just exactly what to do. And with that, I'll pass.
Okay, let's go on to the next section here. The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. On that basis, we are almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. Most people try to live by self-propulsion. Each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show, is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. If his arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. In trying to make these arrangements, our actor may sometimes be quite virtuous. He may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. On the other hand, he may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. But as with most humans, he is more likely to have varied traits. And this is Kathleen. I'll make a comment. So one of the great things about the big book is it gives us a chance when we read things like this. It gives us a chance to see if we relate and see if these things fit for us. And if we're really alcoholics, if we're really addicts and codependents, what I just read, we're going to be able to relate to that. So, we're trying to run the show. And we're doing it with our own self-will. And we feel like, and most of the time we're basically in conflict with life as it is. We are in collision with others and how they're doing life, how they're showing up in this show that we're trying to run, that we have all the best ideas about. And part of my other comment is that, these two different ways that we go about this, we might on the one hand, we're being kind and considerate, patient, generous, modest, self-sacrificing, but we're still trying to get. That's the motive. We're still trying to run the show. We're just using that way of being, that way of relating to run the show. And then other times we're still trying to run the show, but now we're egotistical, we're mean, we're dishonest. So the common denominator there is that we're trying to run the show. And we learn that we are even, we're trying to manipulate life as it is because we think we know what we need to do to get what we need to get so that we can be happy. And that's what the point is we'll use whatever we need to do. And in one case, it might be that I need to be mean and selfish and I might need to lie. And then a couple days later, I know that I might think, oh, and I'm not even thinking about it. I'm just doing it because I'm so used to it. I'll be patient and kind here. But really underneath that is I'm still trying to get somebody to do it my way. And with that, I'll pass.
Thanks, Kathleen. This is Heather, and I'll comment. Yeah, I think, it asks us that the first thing that we need to be is convinced that this isn't working. And they tell us that it's because we're in collision with something or somebody. And it doesn't matter what our motives are, if they're good or not. And so what results then is that we have this constant conflict and chaos in our life where we are trying to make everyone conform for our ease and comfort without consideration to other people. We think or have the impression that we are kind of the center of the universe and everything has to rotate and happen through us. And that is what self-will, that they talk about. That's the results you get from self-will. And with that, I'll pass.
Thanks, Heather. This is Nicole. And yeah, we're often baffled why our relationships are in constant conflict. How did we get here? We end up in these moments over this hamster wheel, like over and over and over again. We wind up in chaos and conflict, and we keep looking outside of ourselves for the answer. Why is it all going wrong? And we can't figure it out. We think the solution is outside of ourselves. And so we try to arrange everybody. We try to control other people's behavior. We try to control how someone might think of us or how they might look at us. We try to get all of our ducks in a row so that we can feel better, so we can stop this chaos. We can stop this cycle. And there's, they're saying here that there isn't any judgment in it in terms of we don't have to be coming from a bad place in order for something to be selfish. Like really, really considering what selfish actually means instead of that, selfish is bad and it's cruel and it's unkind. It's just that everything is about me. Everything's about what I want, and everything's about striving to get what I want, and then using people in order to get there, to feel better about ourselves. And it's saying, we can be virtuous, we can be kind and considerate, but we're employing these things as strategies to try to get liked, get love, get approval, whatever it is. It's still we're on a mission, right, to feel better. And everything is we're looking on the outside, and ultimately, the problem is that we're living life for self. We're living life to get, and we're completely disconnected from a higher power, from what that higher power's will is for us, and we just keep digging trenches and trying to get where we're going. That's all I had. Thanks.
Thanks, Nicole. This is Dave. I think particularly in families who have an addiction to attention and an addiction to appearances, to the outside world, this concept of self-will and self-propulsion is subtly taught to those of us who are kids growing up in 100 different ways. And it doesn't sound like what this paragraph describes it as. It sounds more like this. Dave, if you're going to get good grades, you need to be the one to take the responsibility and study hard every night for 90 minutes from 7 p.m. to 8:30. If you're going to play a musical instrument, you need to practice every night for 30 minutes, Monday through Friday. Just those kind of detailed things, kind of, the early bird gets the worm kind of concept. And they think that it's a good thing that they're teaching. They do it, and they think that the people around them should do it. The problem is we overdo it as addicts. Our problem is self-will run riot. As is described in the second half of this paragraph, we rope everybody else around us and their behavior and their choices and who they are and who they want to be into this thing. And we not only think that we should practice hard enough and get there early enough and do it well enough, but we think that they should behave and cooperate and be who we want them to be. We should be able to get our way. As we will find, that typically does not go well for anybody. And with that, I will pass.
All right, we'll move on to the next section. What usually happens? The show doesn't come off very well. He begins to think life doesn't treat him right. He decides to exert himself more. He becomes, on the next occasion, still more demanding or gracious, as the case may be. Still, the play does not suit him. Admitting he may be somewhat at fault, he is sure that other people are more to blame. He becomes angry, indignant, self-pitying. What is his basic trouble? He is not really a self-seeker. Is he not really a self-seeker, even when trying to be kind? Is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if he only manages well? Is it not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things he wants? And do not his actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of the show? Is he not, even in his best moments, a producer of confusion rather than harmony? And I'll just do a comment here. So what usually happens? So what are the results of a person living their life by self-will and self-propulsion, no matter the motive? And usually it is that they say he begins to think that life doesn't treat him right. And so what we see in this paragraph then is the results of his actions. And what happens is that people retaliate against it. They don't want to have any part of it, or they may act in a similar way. And our addict is angry, indignant, self-pitying, self-seeker, a victim. All of those, feelings that, poor me, if things would just go my way, everything would be all right. And so this is kind of this paragraph, the results of what happens when we try to live by self-will and self-propulsion. And I'll pass.
Thanks, Heather. This is Dave. This is the part that isn't often taught in that whole concept of, just work hard enough and things will go better for you. If you put enough time in if you get there early enough. If you do it just right, then you'll succeed. The missing piece is, oh, and by the way, if you expect that everyone else will cooperate and do things the way you want, you are going to get into a situation where you're constantly producing confusion rather than harmony in your relationships with other people, and they are going to wish to retaliate and snatch all they can get out of the show. I remember hearing the practice hard and do your work well stuff, but I do not remember hearing and you're going to have all kinds of trouble in your relationships part. But in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous here, they make it clear that what ends up happening is we feel like a victim and feel a great deal of resentment when the others don't cooperate. All they are really doing is just trying to be themselves in the same world and in the same space with everyone else, including you, including me. But they're not obligated to cooperate and be who I want them to be in order for me to feel how I want to feel and get what I want to get, and so on and so forth. This is what they are describing is the root. It's not the symptom, it's the root of the disease of addiction. And with that, I'll pass. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. This is Nicole. Similar to what was just said, I think it's this idea that we just try harder. We just do more, and we can never get enough of trying the next thing. And we think this time it's going to be different. This time I'm going to take this approach and it will end differently. This time I'll do this and it will end differently. Apply myself more to the problem, and focusing on the problem, talking about the problem, and then when it doesn't work, when our trying harder doesn't work, then we switch and we go into blaming. Well, then the other person is really at fault. And then we become angry, indignant, self-pitying. And then, this idea that, and do not his actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of the show. Not that we get what we deserve, but that we get what we think we are. We get what we think other people are. We get what we think men are, what we think women are, what we think families are. And we're in relationships and we're doing transactions. It's transactional, and other people on some level know that, just like we know that. And so, when there's a realization that there isn't actually an exchange of love, there isn't actually an exchange of selflessness, of giving, then we kind of see that mirrored back. So that's all I have. I'll pass.
Thank you, Nicole. I was instructed to read this section out loud to myself and put it in first person. Everything from the last page that we were on, but this section, what it would be is what usually happens. The show doesn't come off very well. I begin to think that life doesn't treat me right. I decide to exert myself more. I become on the next occasion still more demanding or gracious as the case may be. Still, the play does not suit me, admitting I may be somewhat at fault. I am sure that other people are more to blame. So when I read the section that way, I was asked to see if I could see myself in that. And with that, I'll pass.
Thanks, Tina. I'll go ahead and pick up the next paragraph. Our actor is self-centered, egocentric, as people like to call it nowadays. He is like the retired businessman who lolls in the Florida sunshine in the winter, complaining of the sad state of the nation. The minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century. Politicians and reformers who are sure all would be utopia if the rest of the world would only behave. the outlaw safecracker who thinks society has wronged him, and the alcoholic who has lost all and is locked up. Whatever our protestations, are not most of us concerned with ourselves, our resentments, and our self-pity? Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that at some point in the past we've made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. And I'll go ahead and open it up for comments.
Thanks, Nicole. This is Kathleen. So, this concept of self-centered is an important one to get in our recovery. So, again, this is a way of life. It's the way of life that we have known. So we don't know how it might feel or what it might look like to do it differently. But in this way of life of self-centeredness, everything is about us. Everything that happens is about how it affects us. Everything that everybody does that we don't like, we think it's about us. Or they are treating us this way. Our whole entire perspective, that's why they say egocentric. Our whole perspective is coming from me, and how this is for me, and all these ideas that we have about why other people do things. And we're basically still trying to get the world to behave. And we're still feeling wronged by others. For those of us that are maybe think about God, it's wronged by God. It's just always a problem, the way things are happening. And what we're most concerned with, is it says it here, ourselves, our resentments, and our self-pity. So we are so consumed by this that we don't think about anything else. We spend all of this energy on it. And what this program teaches us to do is something different from that. And we begin to shift to, this is why it's so important, and the principle of giving rather than getting. And the instructions in this book teach us how to move into giving rather than getting. And that focus stops being on ourself all the time. And we have to practice that. And we have to have help doing that by living in 10, 11, and 12 after we're done with the steps. So it is this new way of being out of the self-centeredness into how can I contribute?
Thanks, Kathleen. This is Dave. That line, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Being obsessed in self-obsession with our own thoughts and the way we might feel, you would think that one could possibly just pull that off internally and that it wouldn't affect other people. What the big book tells us, though, is that it really isn't possible to do that without stepping on the toes of our fellows and retaliating. And the reason is that kind of thing festers and then bubbles over. It bubbles over in the next reaction. It bubbles over in the next defensiveness, or in the next irritation, or in the next blame instead of listen. It's insidious because it shuts out, it isolates and separates and shuts out all other people except for the one who is doing the thinking, the one who is involved in the obsession. And again, this wasn't taught that we were going to step on our toes of our fellows and retaliate and they might hurt us. but it's our experience. It's what actually happens. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Dave. This is Tina. So the first section that was read, where it talks about he's like the retired businessman who lolls on the floor to sunshine, complaining in the sad state of the nation, the minister who sighs over the sins of this 20th century, politicians and reformers who are sure that all will be utopia if the rest of the world would only behave. So all of these examples are examples of those who think that the problem is outside of themselves with other people, that the world or people are other people in the world are the problem. And we have to go through living like this for a long time, this blaming, focusing on others, before it gets miserable enough for us to want a different way of life. Then that statement, selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. So this tells us why this book works for everyone. Because whether your symptom is drinking or acting out sexually or codependency or food or whatever the problem, the symptom of the problem, we have the same root trouble. And that root trouble is our selfishness and self-centeredness. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Tina. I'm going to continue with the reading. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves. And the alcoholic or the addict is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. Above everything, we addicts must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. And there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them even though we would have liked. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. We had to have God's help. My quick comment on this material is that just like focusing on stopping our behavior, whatever our addictive behavior is drinking. We find no success with stopping the drinking or quitting the drinking. It's drug use, the same thing. Overeating, the same thing. Selfish sex, the same thing. Codependence, the same thing. We have no success stopping. We are not going to have any success stopping this self-will and self-thinking and self-obsession either. The only solution, as described in the big book, is to turn to something new to keep us connected with our higher power. But even knowing everything about this self-will stuff, that does not help us in terms of getting rid of it. And with that, I'll pass. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. So if we think about this extreme example of self-will run riot, and so why is that? You know, we're the extreme of the self-centeredness, the self-seeking, the self will, and if we're alcoholics or codependents, we're addicted to something, and we've learned in earlier podcasts that we have a mind and a body. We have a two-part problem, and we cannot stop once we start. We forget that this is really a problem, and start doing it again, and we have this craving for it. So, and that is, we don't have any control over that. So our self-will to get it is going to go all the way to the end of its, to the point of death. But we're going to take it all the way, extreme self-will, because we've got this problem that won't quit and we can't do anything about it with human solution. And so that's why we end up being this extreme version. And the only solution is a power greater than ourselves. Because we're just going to use our self-will to get whatever it is that we are addicted to, that we crave, that we cannot stop. And that creates this self-centeredness, that's the root of all of our problems, our selfishness. And with that, I pass.
Thanks, Heather. Sorry, Kathleen. Yeah, this moral, many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them even though we would have liked to. So this isn't going to happen in our heads. We can't come up with another slogan or another, I'm gonna be happy. I'm just gonna choose to be happy. I'm just gonna choose not to let this bother me. Whatever it is, no matter how many things we throw at it, it's not enough. And that the good news here is that it is selfishness that's at the root of this, and self-centeredness. And so looking outside of ourselves and trying to attack the problem from outside of ourselves, it's an impossible task. It's like wrangling baby chickens. It's just never going to happen. We're never going to get everything to line up. But we can do something about taking responsibility and ownership for our own behavior. And also that we have to have God's help. We can't get rid of self without his aid. This is where that idea of turning our will and our lives, our thinking and our actions over to a higher power as we understand it. So there's actions that we take around this when we turn from selfishness, from getting to giving. That's all I have. I'll pass.
Okay, I'll read the next section. This is the how and why of it. First, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He is the principal. We are his agents. He is the Father, and we are his children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. When we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer. Being all powerful, he provided what we needed if we kept close to him and performed his work well. Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. More and more, we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of his presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter. We were reborn. So the first paragraph I just read is that all of the stuff that we've been reading about so far and talking about is us playing God. And it didn't work. And a lot of us have to try and try and try again, over and over again, to get to the point where we realize it isn't working, it didn't work. And that nothing that we try in every single way that we come at it is still not working. There's nothing that we can get to work anymore. So then we get to the point that we're ready to make this bargain with our higher power. And that bargain is that we have a new employer. Being all powerful, he provided what we needed. So that is our higher powers part of the third step bargain. Our higher power is going to provide what we need. And then it says, if, and here comes our two parts of this high bargain with our higher power. If, number one, we kept close to him, and number two, performed his work well. So that is the two-part bargain that comes in this third step for us. And then when we're established on this kind of a footing where we are now looking to stay close to our higher power and perform higher power's work well, then we become less and less interested in ourselves and our little plans and designs. More and more we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. And then as we feel this new power flow in, we start to enjoy peace of mind. It's where the shift begins, this bargain that we're basically beaten into a state of reasonableness. We've tried everything, nothing works, and it makes us willing to take this third step that we're learning about right now. And with that, I'll pass.
Thanks, Tina. So a couple of comments. One is that, when we read this first paragraph, we get to, we've already talked about in earlier podcasts, we get to decide for us who, what our higher power is, right? Nobody gets to say, this is the only, you have to believe in this way and this God. It's a God of our understanding. So when we read this, God, it says God, and it says he is the principal, he is the agent, he is the father, and we are the children. So I'm just encourage anybody listening to this podcast to say it how it works, with your understanding. Higher power is our director, higher power is our principal, and our agent, and we are the ones that don't, we're the ones that don't understand it all, right? We're the ones that aren't directing. That's not the lead, the parent. The other thing is that if you notice here, these positions and these tasks or actions, I should say. So this position and this action, this performance of things that we need to take to do, that comes first. And it's when we do that, and for many of us, it means doing that over a period of time, that then we begin to feel this footing, right? This groundedness. And it's in that we begin to feel and experience some peace of mind. And we begin to feel like we could face life as it is successfully. And then we become conscious of this presence. And then which means to me, and what happened for me is after all of that, I begin to hear higher power's direction and feel the presence of higher power. And it was not the other way around. It cannot be the other way around. We have to step out into that faith. We have to take those actions. And we're on step 3 right now in this podcast. That's what this is all about. So we have to be willing to step into that faith, to step into that position that God is the director. Step into the actions of this bargain that we have with this power. And then we begin to slowly feel a different way, and a way that we've never felt in our lives before. It's not the feeling of, oh, I got what I wanted today. Oh, I got the drink and I'm drinking the drink. Oh, he called me. He paid attention to me. It's not the same feeling at all. That's a get feeling. And it's not lasting. This is a feeling that comes around having footing. It comes around feeling some success and facing life as it is. And then it comes with this presence. And with that, I pass.
Thanks, Kathleen. This is Dave. I just wanted to comment for a minute on the two words playing God. I think there's probably more than two, but there's two sort of obvious aspects to that. The first one is what's been described in the prior paragraphs, which is the idea that we can control or manage or direct the lives of other people as well as our own. Clearly, that's an example of playing God in someone else's life. There's another aspect that's maybe a little more subtle and a little bit sometimes harder to see about playing God, and that is listening to our mind talk to us, thinking. That's the ego, our mind talking to us, and believing that the story that's coming from there is the truth and is real and is reality, rather than actually God's world and universe being the truth and real and reality. We literally think that we can that our thoughts about what somebody else is thinking and feeling are what they are really thinking and feeling. For example, we believe absolutely that that's true, and we're busy playing God when we're doing that. And it's just super important to see that for what it is, that believing what our mind is telling us is in fact absolutely the root of our problem. And what they write here is, as soon as we get that idea, this is the keystone of a new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. We have been living in a trap, and the trap is made up in our own mind. And of course, the second paragraph just describes the actual experience that these folks had in the promises that came to them when they stopped believing that they could play God in this world. And with that, I'll pass. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. I just want to piggyback a little bit on what you said. When we looked at the sentence where it says, if we take up this bargain, the third step bargain, that we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. And so what that means is, we give up our self-will. And our self-will, of course, is driven by our ego. And so once we, accept God as our director or our principal, we become interested in seeing what we can contribute to life. And we feel a new power flow in, and we have peace of mind as we discover that we can face life successfully. So we give up the ego and we become aligned with our higher power and our true self, who we were meant to be, what our purpose was, what we were here to give, not to get. And we replace the chaos of our life with peace. And I find it interesting that they finish with, we were reborn. So this is the way we came into the world. And this is the way that the path that our higher power, sees for us and guides us to. And I'll pass.
Thank you, Heather. This is Tina. I just wanted to offer that when I took this third step bargain, as was previously mentioned, I was told that I could use whatever words that worked for me to replace God. And at the time, though that has evolved now, and I am more comfortable using the word God and higher power, the way that I read this bargain is if I kept close to love and performed love's work well. And it was such a shift to think in terms of being a contributor to life. I had been so desperately trying to suck satisfaction out of this world by managing well, in just a desperate attempt to feel better. But this was certainly the turning point as it's described. This idea that I am here for a purpose, I am here to contribute to life. And as was previously mentioned, it certainly did feel like a rebirth. However, it actually felt like the original birth, because I was raised in a home affected by addiction, and misery began very quickly. So it actually felt like the first birth, this getting to, for once, see that my life could have meaning and purpose, and I could be useful and contribute. And with that, I'll pass.
Thanks, Tina. So let me keep reading. We were now at step 3. Many of us said to our Maker, as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. We thought well before taking this step, making sure we were ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to him. So this is the point in the step. This is the third step where we speak to this power of our understanding that we are now, we're powerless. We come to believe there's something out there that does have the power. And this is when we turn and we say this to that power. And I just want to point out, it's like asking, right? Please relieve me of this. And please take away my difficulties and let me have victory over them. And then it says, please help me to bear witness to others, or to live in that power's power and the love of that power and the way of the life of that power and in the will of that power. So of everything we studied tonight in this podcast, we just said, no, it's not going to be my will. I'm not the director. And I'm going to ask this power to help me to live in its power, in its love, in its way of life, and in its will. Thanks.
Thanks, Kathleen. Each of these sentences is that turn that we've been talking about. So, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Or love, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. So that's the turn from getting life on our terms, getting our way, the plans that we have for ourselves, for our lives, what the things that we think we want and the things that we think we need, to turning that over to say, I'm going to try to hook in to that inner voice, that inner resource, and follow the direction. It may not be the life that I think I need, but it will absolutely be a life better than we could have imagined. And then the next part: relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. So, not relieve me of this burden of myself, that self pity stuff. It's, please take this away so that I am an open channel to bring your will and give your will and follow your will. And then take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help. Not take away my difficulties for me, but take away my difficulties so that I can bring this solution to others. So again, turning away from ourselves and considering, really putting others into consideration. So I think that's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you, Nicole. This phrase, relieve me of the bondage of self, and just a little bit of what that looked like for me. I was constantly obsessing, thinking. What do people think of me? And it was the thinking of myself all of the time, analyzing every step I took, making up stories about things that I thought people thought of me. It was definitely bondage. And it was bondage of self. It was bondage to me. I was thinking about me all of the time, me and myself, or what are other people thinking of me? And that is hell. It's bondage, and it is incredibly limiting and stifling and suffocating and life zapping. It is a horrible way to live, and gratefully it brought me to my bottom. And again, that these words bear witness, that the victory over them may bear witness. It restores us to our birthright. So we were born to create, to be intelligent agents of God's ever expanding creation. That's our birthright. We were born to have purpose and meaning. And this is what this does for us. It restores us to that life that we were intended to have. And when we are restored to that life that we are intended to have, in the way that the 12 steps does that for us, is it that we begin to bear witness, and basically our lives begin to demonstrate something worth having now, instead of this miserable, self-obsessed life where we're just kind of waiting for a kernel of approval or an ounce of attention or whatever. We now have this.
All right, this is Heather. We'll move on. We found it very desirable to take this spiritual step with an understanding person, such as our wife, best friend, or spiritual advisor. But it is better to meet God alone than with one who might misunderstand. The wording was, of course, quite optional, so long as we expressed the idea, voicing it without reservation. This was only a beginning, though if honestly and humbly made, an effect, sometimes a very great one, was felt at once. Next, we launched out on a course of vigorous action, the first step of which is a personal house cleaning, which many of us had never attempted. Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless it at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which have been blocking us. Our liquor was but a symptom, so we had to get down to causes and conditions. And I'll just do a brief comment. So, in that first paragraph, what I see is some instructions on how to take the third step, and how you may have a witness to that commitment to higher power. It tells us that it should be without reservation, and that when we do it in a heartfelt and open way, that, it has a humbling effect. And I would also add, the peace and the freedom that comes with that commitment and that prayer. So it can feel like you've just laid down a very large burden that you've been carrying for some time. And the second paragraph is getting us ready for step 4. So once we have made that commitment to a higher power, we need to get some work done, and we need to do some actions. And that's going to be our spiritual house cleaning that begins with our inventory, and where our inventory is going to reveal for us, the things that have been blocking us. So what has kept us from higher power are the things that we're going to uncover in this next 4th step. And I'll pass.
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, notice, we immediately, it's like we just turned our will over, and this next is this vital and crucial step, and we need to get on it. So it's important, this is faith without works is dead. So we just demonstrated the faith, and it was actually pretty simple because we just said a prayer. But now we have to take some action. And that action is basically recognizing, okay, liquor was just the symptom. So we have to look at what is it that was blocking us from this power that can help us live this life. And that's what step 4 is about. So we're going to look at, and we're going to need to do it strenuously. It's vital. It's crucial. They've got some words in here that are really emphasizing we have got to move this stuff out of the way. And that's all we're doing. We're just moving into an inventory. But this is the action that's going to get us, one of the first actions that's going to get us connected, because we've got to clean out that channel that's so clogged up with all these things. And then this part about the symptom, we think that drinking is the problem. We think that relationships are the problem. We think that, all of these things, that these addictions that we have to something is the problem. And that's not the problem. It's only the symptom. And the problem is really lies in this selfishness. And another part of the problem is all of this stuff that's in the way, and we need to clear it out. Thanks.